50 miles of elbow room.
Actually, before we begin, could I remind everyone to please silence their cell phones if they haven't already done so? On behalf of the family, I'd like to welcome you to this service in memory of Ted Young and to thank you for being here today. My name is Becky Galloway. For many years, I've spent much of each summer in the house across the road from Andersonville Cemetery and less than a mile down the road from the Young family farm. Over those years, our families became good friends. That friendship continued as Ted and Rebecca began their family and continues to this day. I now live here full-time and cherish my friendship with the Young family. To begin, we'll hear memories of Dad from Sarah Young Shu, Ted and Rebecca's daughter, and following Sarah, Teo Young, one of Ted and Rebecca's two sons, will share his memories.
I've had some good luck in my life, but one of the greatest pieces of fortune was having Ted Young for my dad. They say the stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Losing him so suddenly, most of the stages hit me at once. Not so much anger, I'm my father's daughter. He didn't so much control his temper as not have one. Bargaining doesn't seem like it would be very effective. I don't have the collateral for a time machine. But the shock comes with a lot of denial. How could he really be gone? It doesn't seem real much of the time. And sadness, and also increasingly acceptance. We could have had more time, but we also could have had less. You never know how long any life will be. But no one knew this and how to make the time count better than Dad. Every year in late January, he'd remind me, "Wish me happy birthday." He was born in July, but in January of 1993, he almost died under a tree in the woods. He truly believed every day after that was a bonus, and he got 30 years of bonus days. Last year at a family gathering, my Aunt Sal had each of us answer a series of soul-searching questions. My family has all the best party games. One of them was, what would you do differently if you knew that you only had 6 months to live? Many of us said we'd quit our jobs or go on a big trip. And Dad said I wouldn't change a thing. He was already living each day to the fullest. The death and dying literature tell us that people near the end of life often need to resolve their relationships by telling people one or more of the following: thank you, I'm sorry, I forgive you, and I love you. Dad lived his life such that I doubt he had any of that unfinished business with anyone. Today I'm going to share some of my thank yous to Dad with you. Growing up, most of my earlier memories of Dad were working with him. That's pretty normal for families, I think. I couldn't have been more than 5 when we started to help him get the cows and run the handle on the wood splitter. By 10 or so, Dad would get me up at 5 a.m. to help with morning milkings during the summer. Given that he did it by himself the other 9 months of the year, I'm sure it wasn't the second set of hands that prompted this so much as the chance to spend time together. He worked hard all the time when he was farming, but the only way that you knew he was exhausted by the long hours was that he'd fall asleep if he sat down in an even semi-comfortable chair within minutes. But he never whined or complained. Dad was one of the most essentially optimistic people I've ever met. He believed most people are good or trying to be, and that most problems are solvable. In fact, one of his most sayings, second only to "Time's up," shouted Bluebeard, was be thankful for problems that money can solve. And that was a refrain for him long before he had enough money to make that obvious. But he meant that an overturned tractor that didn't kill anyone, or a crop lost to weather, are problems, but fundamentally not big problems, not the problems that break your heart. And that perspective was one he lived his life by. His consistent good-naturedness may be best summed up by his granddaughter Madison asking when she was a little girl, "Grandpa, do you whistle every day?" Dad was also generous. This came from his feeling that everyone deserves a decent life. He didn't believe in take care of our own first, or maybe he did, but he thought that every human on earth is our own. He didn't go around pushing his beliefs, but he led by example. Even in the tough milk market years, I'd see my folks making checks out to feed hungry children in Africa. And later, when I was a grown-up, he'd entice me into a new charity with, "Did you see this one that fixes cleft lips in Afghanistan? Imagine what a difference that makes for a person's life." Or, "Don't you think this little girl deserves to go to school?" He was also generous in letting other people's mistakes go without rubbing it in, unless your mistake was trying to tickle him or touch his feet, and then he would whack you. But otherwise, if you say we're making vanilla pudding with your cousin Beth at the age of 8, unsupervised somehow, and didn't know fractions yet, so 1/8 seemed like 1 + 8 = 9 teaspoons of salt, he'd just eat your pudding and say, "A little salty, but thank you." If you run your car into a snowbank, he'd get the tractor and pull you out, and he knew you could conclude on your own that you needed to take the corners a little slower. One of the many things I'm grateful for is that Dad was in my life long enough for us to be grown-ups together. We got to enjoy many nice IPAs and compare Wordle scores. After retirement, or semi-retirement, he became an avid reader, was always recommending books and chatting about politics. That time where we spent together as friends as much as father-daughter was a true blessing. You can't tell the story of Dad without talking about the Ted and Rebecca love story. They met in high school and went on to have a beautifully harmonious marriage for 54 years. When I was little, I'd catch them hugging in the kitchen and stand on their feet trying to squeeze in between them. But there was no coming between these two. While riding in a car, they'd be holding hands as often as not. Beyond their obvious affection, they had mutual respect. They'd reason through family and business issues together and carry out solutions as a united front. It's a lot easier to build a good marriage when you've witnessed one, so I thank them for that. We're all going to miss him so much, but we'll honor him by carrying forward what he taught us about life and taking care of the people he loved. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Teo Young, and I stand before you as one of the proud sons of Robert Young. Today, I wish to honor the life of my father, my mentor, and my hero. My dad was my hero. When I was younger, my dad was in his prime, and he was everything to me. I was a young farm boy who was always looked up to my dad, the hard-working farmer. He was tall, handsome, strong veins in his arms, had a beautiful wife and my mother, loved to drive big John Deere tractors. He was my guy. As I got older and put things into perspective, I learned that he couldn't move mountains, but he was a godly man, and God could move mountains, so he was still my guy. My father was a great man, a man of great integrity, humor, compassion. He lived by the principles that he instilled in us: hard work, respect for others, and the importance of family. My father had a great sense of humor. He was always ready with that one zinger, that funny one-liner that comes out of nowhere, made the room smile. I don't have his witty sense of humor, but I often tried with my kids, and they ended up sounding more like lame dad jokes. The boys humor me. This is hard for our family because it was unexpected. It can sometimes be easier to take if you see your loved ones confined to a bed for weeks or months. You can almost prepare yourself for what's coming. We didn't get that time with Dad. I'm glad you didn't leave me when I was still finding my way through life. You must have known I still needed you, that I needed your knowledge and sometimes a good kick in the butt to find my way. My father never put his hands on me, and I honestly never had to. Just a look on his face and the thought of disappointing him was enough for me. My dad taught me how to be a calm and caring father. I credit my father for the patience I have gained and later applied with my kids. Unlike most people that get angry when things aren't working out, Dad never physically got upset or cursed. I used to help him around the farm and watch him fix machinery, and when things didn't go well, he remained calm and found a logical solution. Later in life, as I coached my sons basketball, had 10 little kids running around with their heads cut off, one yelling, one on the floor, one kicking the ball, I would always wonder, how would Dad handle this? And get through it. I loved milking with them and learning everything about farming. I want to share a story about when I was a young farmer and shut down half the power to Andersonville. One summer day, my dad asked me to mow the big field below our farm. I was young and so excited to please him. I woke up early, super early, and wanted to surprise him by being done early enough to have breakfast with him. I went down to the farm, got the tractor started, and mowed until the sun came out. It took me hours to mow that field. When I was done, it looked great. As the sun came up, I noticed I had left a bit of grass around the telephone poles that went through the field. I decided to get that little bit of grass near the telephone poles to please my dad. As I came around with the tractor and the mower, I got too close to the first telephone pole and literally cut the pole in half. I was so scared of what Dad was going to do. I jumped off the tractor and ran home as fast as I could. To my surprise, he remained super calm and explained, well, that's why the power is out. Dad knew I was shook up. He had every right to be upset, but instead he opened his arms and hugged me. I knew I was going to be okay. Instead of yelling at me, he chose to teach me. That lesson stuck with me ever since. I am grateful for my father's wisdom and understanding. My dad was and will always be my hero. I'm so sorry for your loss, Mom. I love you and I love you, Dad.
The families asked me to share a reading from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 to 13. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, and for Ted, a time to pick stone, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he hath set the world in their hearts, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. I know that there is no good in them, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. And also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good for all his labor. It is the gift of God. Will you join me in saying the Lord's Prayer as it is in your bulletin? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And now, before our next speaker, please join me as we listen to a recording of You Raise Me Up, sung by Josh Gordon.
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burden be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. Raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I
Liz? Yep.
I am Liz Nelson, and I am so fortunate to have been Ted's neighbor, fellow farmer, and a friend for over half a century. Ted's life was filled with love, happiness, much hard work, curiosity, and good humor. He was always learning. Our farms were next to each other, and over the many years, there were truly thousands of conversations, shared experiences, and helpful actions between us farmers and our farms. And despite all the work, there was so much laughter and fun. To me, Ted was a person who was completely at home with himself, centered on the life of the farm and his family. I think Ted's spirit was symbolized by the maple tree, deep-rooted in the flinty earth, strong and enduring, valuable and splendid in all seasons. He studied and excelled in agricultural science at UVM. And his passion for farming was truly energizing, motivating all who knew him and worked with him. His actions, whether big or small, demonstrated his unwavering commitment to this part of the world. As farmer neighbors and friends, we helped each other in every way. Celebrations, sorrows, weddings, deaths, births, all shared. We joked about water on our next-door farms. Ted and Rebecca spent tens of thousands of dollars on tiling their fields to make them drier and more usable for crops, while Jeff and I spent tens of thousands of dollars drilling for wells for water on our dry side of the hill. We had the best kind of shop talk. We shared any discoveries we came upon in historical practices, in other words, how they used to do it, in progress in dairy science, or the newest discoveries in machinery and crop management. But usually Ted knew the most. It was in his marrow. Ted wanted every farm to succeed. He shared this deep knowledge with such generosity. You never felt stupid or put down, just enlightened. So much is out of the farmer's control. The weather is different every hour. The milk check is different every 2 weeks. The cows can get sick, the machinery can break, and there can be a plague of armyworms to wipe out half the summer's hay crop. There are a variety of devastating accidents, but there weren't too many situations where Ted's calmness and sense of dry humor didn't prevail. He was completely present and grateful for his life, for Rebecca and their daughter Sarah and their sons Teo and Josh, for their grandchildren, for his friends, for the larger community that he served. He was grateful for being able to be a farmer in the place he loved, doing what he always wanted to do with the people he loved.
Hello, I'm Luke. I'm Ted's grandson. I want to read Of the Land by Baxter Black. We are of the land that everybody's trying to save. We are of the earth from the glimmer to the grave. We're the plankton in the ocean, we're the grass upon the plain, we're the lichen on the tundra, we're the clevis in the chain. You will find us on the outskirts, coaxing bounty from the ground, with our watchful eyes cast skyward, well beyond the lights of town. Dust to dust we are committed, to the earth in which we stand. We are farmers by our birthright, we're the stewards of the land. There are those who sit in towers, who pretend to know what's best. They pontificate and dabble, they bray loudly, they protest, that a peasant can't be trusted with the land to which he's bred, and they rail with the courage of a person who's well fed. We have labored through the ages for these power-hungry kings. We have fielded the wars of nations with their arrows and their slings. We have fed the teeming masses without fish and loaves of bread, so the poor would sit and listen to the words the prophet said. Mother Earth can be forgiving when in ignorance we err, but she can die of good intentions. She needs someone who will care, not with platitudes of poets touting blood and seat and toil, but with daily care of someone with his hand upon the soil.
My name is Jesse Coe. For those who don't know me, I grew up along with my brothers, James and Eric, my mother, Elizabeth Nelson, Jeff Kinsey, just down the road from Ted and Rebecca. When we got the news, no one knew what to say, what to do. His loss will be a huge void for us. What we can do is honor him. Ted was an important part of the Glover community. When we got the news, Ted was an important part of the Glover community. He was an important part of the farming community. He was an important part of the sugaring community. And he was an important person to all of us here today. We all sure have done a lot of reflecting on our memories we have of Ted. We all have so many great experiences with Ted, so many conversations, so many laughs. Definitely has made us reflect on how important special people are in our lives. Ted was one of those people. Rebecca has asked me to speak to you today about Ted's lifetime love of sugaring. Ted and Rebecca have been sugaring together from the beginning, early on partnering with Robbie and June. They worked hard to improve and evolve, always keeping their operation modern and viable, and winning ribbons for their syrup and maple cream the whole time. Best to show for their cream has become the norm. Ted was a longtime director of the Vermont Maple Sugar Makers Association, president of the Orleans County Maple Producers Association for over 10 years. Ted and Rebecca volunteered for the years working at the maple booth at the Big E. Ted, along with Jim Richardson, coordinated Orleans County Sugar House at the fairgrounds for many, many years. Over the years, I, along with our Orleans County Maple Producer Association directors and volunteers, worked long hours with Ted at the Sugar House, serving up maple creamies and dumplings. The directors have definitely grown a strong friendship with one another over these years, and I can speak for all of our Orleans County Maple Producer directors in saying that we will miss Ted so much in our organization. I know Sarah and Teo and Josh, along with all the cousins, hold fond memories of growing up with the old Sugar House. Giant 6x16 wood-fired evaporator, Ted and Robbie constantly firing from the mountain of stacked firewood. And the steam, so much steam. All us kids would scramble up the stacks of firewood into the rafters where Ted had placed a few planks to stand on. This was the loft. And the steam was so sweet and so thick, a magic experience I know none of us will ever forget. As I said, we are all doing a lot of reflecting. And I can definitely blame Ted for getting me and my brother into sugaring. 15 years ago, James and I decided to tap a few trees. Ted would stop by Jamie's Woods to check in on us. and we would visit about all things sugaring. He had so much knowledge, and to witness Ted's love for sugaring was definitely contagious. I am thankful for those experiences as we get started with our own maple operations. More recently, Ted's mentoring has been with his grandson Trent. Working the past few years with Ted, Trent has learned the woods. You see, as a sugar maker, you get to be close to every single tree, and you become attached to them. You get to know them. You care for them. Ted got to witness this love of sugaring happening to Trent, and it was one of Ted's dreams come true. I can't help but smile to think of Robbie and Ted's legacy forever in those woods, along with the next generation of Youngs. Ted, thank you for teaching us to cherish family, to honor this land, and to show us the magic in these trees. Rest well, my friend. May your smile be in our memory forever. Thank you.
Good morning. First, I'd like to thank the Young family for asking me to speak today. My name is Dennis Gibson. I live in West Glover on the other side of Beach Hill from Ted and Rebecca's place. Ted wore a lot of hats. I was lucky enough to have the privilege of working with Ted as a Glover Town lister for the last 32 years. Ted got started about 15 years before me, serving the town for almost 50 years. He was our unofficial leader as a lister, the senior partner, so to speak. He always kept our listing crew on track and the process moving along. The work could be tedious, but it was always pleasant and sometimes fun. Every spring we would drive every road in Glover, looking for what was new and what was gone, keeping the town's record as accurate as possible. We'd often drive in his pickup truck when the roads were rough. But Becky, I gotta tell you, sometimes he got that little bolt into some amazing places that you probably wouldn't want to know about. One of the first things he taught me was to point out to folks that we just appraise the property. It's school boards and select boards that spend your money. One time early in my career, I was asked to appear before a select board to explain how I had arrived at the square footage of a certain property. Well, first of all, select boards have no authority over listers, as Ted pointed out, except they can set our pay rate. Second, did someone think I did it wrong? Maybe by mistake, maybe on purpose? The more I thought about it, I started to get mad. And I told Ted I was going to give the select board a piece of my mind. Ted thought about it and said, "Why don't I go see him and you stay home?" He went to the meeting and he brought along a copy of the Vermont statutes annotated, marking the statute that gives the listers autonomy, explaining it to the select board and settling the matter for good. Thank you, Ted. In the 90s, we didn't have a computer and did the job on paper, creating elaborate charts that we sent back and forth to the state to put on their mainframe. The whole process took quite a while. It was a major change to get our own computer in the 90s, and since then, every year, it has been a slightly different process thanks to the ever-morphing state programs that the state gives us for our record keeping. We now bounce data back and forth to the state on the internet in real time. Amazing. Ted was instrumental in keeping us accurate and up to date. He was as honest as a man could never be and never had a doubt about what was the right thing to do. I always enjoyed training with Ted. Many times we'd do our training at the Lake Morley Inn where the food was really good. He enjoyed time spent with the other town listers, listening to their tales. He didn't mind at all being a major senior partner. We always came home feeling like we had a leg up on the next year's work. In the times that I worked with Ted, we did 2 major townwide reappraisals. The State of Vermont District Advisors didn't let every town do their own appraisal. Glover, thanks to Ted, was given the nod to go ahead, which we did, saving the town between less than $10,000 for an in-house appraisal and a commercial appraiser, which goes on the plus side of $80,000. We couldn't have done it without Ted. As a neighbor, I love to see him come flying down the road on his red tractor, running wide open and wearing a big smile. He would bring me firewood in his dump wagon, and we always had neighborhood chats in our dooryard, mostly gossip. My wife Peggy and I run a mail order wreath business and have sold Ted and Becky's maple syrup for years. Becky and Trent, I've got my fingers crossed on that one. With Ted's passing, I have personally lost an esteemed colleague, a trading partner, a hiking buddy, a neighborhood champion, and a close friend. We have all lost a pillar of our community. Thank you.
The universe decided that one of the best ways for me to honor Ted was to sprain my ankle and have a limp. So I've got a little bit of a hitch in my gait. But Ted would say, "Oh, you'll be all right." Won't stop him from going nowhere.
Some bright morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to that home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away when the shadows of this life have gone. I'll fly away like a bird from these prison walls. I'll fly. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Oh, how glad and happy when we meet. I'll fly away. No more cold
Morning, I'm Ted's nephew, Joe Houston. I want to thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I am honored to be here sharing with you thoughts and memories of the Ted that we knew and loved. There are two things that have kept popping up over and over again the last few weeks. The first is family and how much Ted's meant to him. From a gymnastics meet of Sarah's to his grandchildren's basketball and soccer games, more often than not, you'd find Ted there. And it was a rare occurrence where I would see Ted and he didn't have an update for me about something that was going on. Stopping in to drop off a book for Becky included an update on Josh's truck engine rebuild. Helping him unhitch the trailer he'd borrowed to haul his syrup included the latest on Teo and his boys. I always thought he was giving those updates because I liked to hear them. But now as a father myself, I understand it was because he was proud of his kids and all they have accomplished. And seeing Sarah and Teo and Josh and the caring parents that they are in their own right, it's obvious they learned from a master. I can't recall a gathering of the extended family without Ted being there. So many of those gatherings ended with my father, Ted, and others sitting at one end of the table, hashing and rehashing the state of farming. And I appreciate Ted welcoming me into those conversations, then respectfully and clearly disabusing any youthfully naive statements I made. I also recall many a time that he either left early or arrived late because milking had to get done too. But Ted loved what he did, and chores never seemed to be a burden. The second thing that keeps coming up is the display of gratitude that followed Ted wherever he went. My brother Jesse reminded me that after late nights haying, whenever we finished, no matter how late it was, or if he had to go check on a freshening cow, before we parted, he always said, "Thanks for the help, sure do appreciate it." And Ted shared that gratitude, paying it back, forward and sideways. Lately, Ted has pretty much insisted I borrow his wood splitter for putting my firewood up, saying, "I've borrowed many things in my life, and now I've got something other people can use, and they should have it." And I'll never forget the summer before my father passed away. When Ted and Becky came to my parents' house one Sunday to help us build the screen porch my father had always dreamed of. Late in the day, as I thanked them both, Ted said, "Well, your father's done an awful lot for us, and I'm just glad we have the chance to do something for him," as if they hadn't been giving him a discount on syrup for years. I'm thankful to have had the opportunity to work with Ted in various settings. Many summer evenings, helping with haying, around 6 o'clock, Ted would say, "Why don't you stop in at the house and grab us each a Mountain Dew from the fridge?" Which was his way of saying we would either be going until the last 60 acres were cut, or the rain came, but darkness was not going to stop us. Ted once said, "I think we've put up more high-quality feed after dark than we have in the daylight." A fact I know did not impress Becky all that much. Later, after he retired from farming, Ted spent some days here and there as a self-titled poor excuse for a carpenter's helper as I worked on various projects for him and Becky. And without fail, at some point he would quote, I believe it was his father, "Well, if it's too short, we can splice it. But if it's too long, I don't know what we're going to do." A lesson I learned from Ted is sometimes it's not what you say, but how you say it that conveys your point. For instance, the word hay. In my experience, Ted had two very distinct ways of saying hey that could change the tone of a conversation from a jovial greeting, "Hey, how are ya?" to mild consternation. "Hey, you didn't really think that truck was going to drive through that mud hole, did you?" A subtle change for sure, but one worth paying attention to. And I've never known anyone who could make a point so effectively saying a single four-letter word as Ted could. One Sunday, I was sitting at the dinner table next to Ted and mentioned that I had read an article in the morning's paper about the death of the traditional Vermont accent. Without skipping a beat, Ted turned to me and just said, "Well..." I think it's safe to say that most of us would describe Ted as being a kind person, generally even-tempered, and showing great concern for others. I do know, however, that his kindness had its limits. One was when it came to playing rummy and crazy eights while watching Madison and Trent when they were out of school. I know Ted never took it easy on them to spare their feelings, but I bet they're better card players for it now. The other place where Ted's kindness took a back seat was dealing with the skunks that so often frequented the doorstep of the milk house. One day he said to me, "Did you know a skunk can hold its breath underwater for 5 minutes?" It gets better. He then went on to say that earlier that morning he had attempted to drown his latest quarry, and after 5 minutes, he pulled the skunk and the trap from the water, and then he said, "That skunk went..." How long does it take to drown a skunk? Ted said somewhere between 5 and 30 minutes is enough. He was going to stick with 30 from then on, just to be safe. As many of you know, Ted's mother-in-law, Avis, was an amazing person who everyone counted on for advice and assistance. There has been a running joke in our family about bestowing the honorific title, the Avis of my generation, when someone channels her spirit. And with my father's passing, I have sometimes referred to myself as the Gary of my generation. But as I think about Ted and what a tremendously positive impact he had on this world, on his world, I think it would be a pretty great thing if we all tried to be the Ted of our generation. Thanks for all the help, Ted. Sure do appreciate it.
The Lord of the Dance was chosen as a recessional music, as Ted wanted to go out happy and doing a jig. The family would like to leave the sanctuary first, and then we'll meet you downstairs for a reception, time to visit and share memories. Thank you all.
I danced in the morning when the world was young. I danced in the moon and the stars and the sun. I came down from heaven and I danced on the earth. And Bethlehem I had my birth. Dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he. And I lead you all, wherever you may be. And I lead you all in the dance, said he. I danced for the scribes and the Pharisees. They wouldn't dance, they wouldn't follow me. I danced for the fishermen, James and John. They came with me, so the dance went on. Dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he. And I lead you all, wherever you may be. And I lead you all in the dance, said he. I danced on the Sabbath and I cured the lame. The holy people said it was a shame. And if they slipped, they hung me high. Left me there on the cross to die. Dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he. And I lead you all, wherever you may be. And I dance with the devil on your back. They buried my body, they thought I was gone. But I am the dance and the dance goes on. Dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he. And I need you all, wherever you may be. And I need you all, and the dance said he. They put me down and I left